you're mimicking the homes of the gods. This is ubiquitous in the ancient world. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not just because ancient aliens like triangles, okay? It really isn't.
Shamasei! Hey everyone, this is Joseph. Welcome to the channel. We're going to take a look at a couple clips from a Hebrew scholar, Dr. Michael Heiser, and an article from Marfugel TV. Air Force technician came face to face with 6-foot shadow person. This could be some sort of cloaking technology. They describe a light orb bouncing in the sky. While working a night shift, the tech encountered what he describes as a shadow person. First he heard footsteps, but not the familiar sound of one of his Air Force comrades in standard issue combat boots. The mystery intruder appeared to be padding round the high security base barefooted. Quote, I saw what I can't really describe as other than a black mass in the shape of a person standing at 6 feet, he says. Not really a shadow, but something that was slightly blurry and didn't reflect any light. The base is well guarded at all times, and it's almost impossible for an unauthorized person to gain access to its sensitive inner areas undetected. But someone or something managed to get very close to a weapons storage area without tripping any alarms.
Eden is, in Ezekiel, a garden. Well, there's no surprise. We get that in Genesis. Down in verse 14, okay, we have the description of the holy mountain. So how in the world can Eden be a garden and a mountain? Like what's that? And of course we can sort of conceive, if we want to literalize things, well, there's probably this mountain there and it had a garden somewhere on it, because mountains have gardens periodically. What's wrong with that? And it doesn't bother us that if we go back to Genesis, we don't get the mountain there, but that's okay. We get it somewhere else. We try to literalize and put these things in our mind because we're not thinking of the metaphor. Because the metaphor is not clear to us. To an ancient person, it's very normal to think that the gods, and this was the reading you did for tonight, that the gods or God, in the case of Israelite thinking, biblical thinking, it's very normal to conceive of deities living in gardens and mountains. Because this is where you see them all over the place, just across the board. Why? Because if you're living in the ancient Near East or Canaan or whatever, where not everybody gets to live in a garden, or not everybody gets to live in a place where they have enough to eat. You are living in a subsistence economy. Every day, your big concern when you get up in the morning is, will I have enough to eat? Will I have enough water? Will my cattle, my livestock, if I'm lucky enough to own them, will they be able to say the same thing at the end of the day? And then the next day comes and it just repeats. Okay, this is why civilizations formed around rivers, because there's water there. Water grows, helps things grow. It helps keep animals alive, helps keep humans alive. Not everybody, could do that. So the idea was that, we can scratch out a living here, and boy, we're blessed if we live near a good water supply and it doesn't dry up, because then we're in a world of hurt. But the gods never have to worry about this because they live in paradise. They live where there's always enough water, and more than enough. It's just gushing everywhere. It's well watered. There's a mist that covered the ground, sprayed the ground, kind of like in the grocery store. You go up to the to the produce and there's that little mist there. That's what I think of anyway whenever I see that thing. But it's like they never have to worry about want. They're always going to have enough to eat. They're always going to have this paradise. And they live on mountains as well because they're remote. The gods don't really like to mingle with people. They're special. They don't like to, mingle with the unwashed masses and all that kind of stuff. So there was this sense that because of remoteness and paradise, this is where the gods live. And so these became metaphors to describe sacred space. Now, how do you transmit that when you are building structures and temples because you want the gods? Good grief, you spent all week making this idol and you want the god to show up and like it. So you want it to look like home, to remind the deity of home. So what do? You decorate it like a garden. You might put it on or near water, or you might build an artificial mountain, like a pyramid or a ziggurat. Okay? That's what's going on up here. You're mimicking the homes of the gods. This is ubiquitous in the ancient world. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not just because ancient aliens like triangles, okay? It really isn't. There's something more going on here upstairs. You're making a nice place to live for the deity that you hope will come here and favor you. That's why you're doing it. So these are common metaphors that are part of the Israelite, world too. Now, what goes on in sacred space to an Israelite is a whole lot different than what goes on for an Egyptian and a Mesopotamian and a Canaanite or a Syrian. Okay, but the trappings, the condo, as it were, okay, is going to look a lot the same. It communicates the same idea. It would be really dumb of the biblical writer to sit there at his desk one day and think, I want to describe where Yahweh lives, but I'm going to do it in such a different way that nobody who reads this is going to be able to pick up on it. Why would you do that? You want people to pick up on it because once they're drawn into the scene and they know what you're talking about, then you're going to hit them between the eyes with theology. They're going to be a captive audience. They're going to know what you're trying to communicate and how it's different from what they are thinking. That's the whole point. You use sameness to get them to the place where they can entertain difference in terms of content, your theology. You just ask yourself a simple question. What if the principalities and powers and the rulers, the powers of darkness, if they know this stuff, and by now they do because, it's out in the open. What do they fear? What do they fear? They fear their own destruction, which means they fear the success of the Great Commission. Romans 15. For I tell you that Christ became a servant to the circumcised, okay, to show God's truthfulness, in order to confirm the promises given to the patriarchs. And in order, you have the Jews in one audience, but the other audience is the Gentiles, in order that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, therefore I will praise you among the Gentiles and sing to your name. And again it is said, rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people. And again, praise the Lord, all you Gentiles, let the peoples extol him. So here, again, he links the resurrection with Gentile ministry, not just Jews, but Gentile ministry. Now, what's going on here? If you look at Romans 15, the end of it, verse 12, Paul tacks on one other verse. And again, Isaiah says, the root of Jesse will come, even he who arises to rule the Gentiles. Now, the root of Jesse, this is messianic language, the branch, okay, the Old Testament would have, or root, or the stump. Interestingly enough, just sidebar, isn't it interesting that for the king, for the Messiah, here once again we have tree, i.e. garden imagery, okay, used of the messianic king. But again, that's a sidebar. We spent a lot of time on cosmic gardens and all that stuff. But here we have the root of Jesse will come, even he who arises to rule the Gentiles. In him will the Gentiles hope. Now what's interesting here is if we turn our interlinear on, Arises is the verb anistemi. It means to rise up. Okay. There's another word used for the same thing that means, again, to rise up. Both of them are used for the resurrection. But anistemi is one that's noteworthy because the noun form of this is anastasis, which is the New Testament word for resurrection. That's anastasis, resurrection. And what's kind of cool is if we go to, I don't know if I have it open, but I'm going to open it here. If we go to the Septuagint, I'm going to show you the English Septuagint here, English translation. Okay, Paul's writing in Greek, Septuagint in Greek. And if I remember my Septuagint numbering correctly, Septuagint, Psalm 82 is not 82, it's 81. Septuagint has different numbering. We read here, again, this is Psalm 82. God assembled, in the divine assembly with the gods. He's going to judge the gods. He rails on them for the chaos they sow in their nations. He says, I said you're gods, you're all children of the Most High. Again, Most High is the term used in Deuteronomy 32 for the divorce of the nations. But now you're going to die as humans, and as one of the rulers, you're going to fall. Stand up, O God, the psalmist says. Rise up, judge the earth, because you will inherit all the nations. Guess what? It's the same verb as this one. Okay, Paul links Jesus' resurrection, resurrection specifically to rule of the Gentiles. He knows his Old Testament. They're again, under foreign supernatural domination. The gods over here have to be dealt with, and they are dealt with by the resurrection. Again, there are several passages like this in the Old Testament, in the Septuagint, where the verb and the noun of resurrection is linked to the rule of Gentile territory. This is why Paul knows his Old Testament really well. This is why Paul, when he thinks of resurrection and he thinks of ascension, he associates it up here mentally and theologically as being the key to diminishing, to stripping away, Colossians 2, to stripping away the authority, disarming the rulers, the principalities and powers over the nations. And ultimately, as the kingdom progresses, let's go back to 1 Corinthians 15, a couple clicks back here. Ultimately, it's not going to be just disarming. When the Great Commission is accomplished, okay, when basically all the people are gathered, then comes the end, and he delivers the kingdom to God the Father, then he's going to destroy them. He's going to destroy them. It's no longer disarming, it's destroying. Now, I often get asked, on talk shows or interviews or whatever, about spiritual warfare and how does all this factor into spiritual warfare. The first thing we have to realize is that Paul's ministry was a tough one. Just because Paul believed on the basis of Scripture and the basis of the reality of the resurrection and the ascension, that the authority of the supernatural powers of darkness in all these places, these Gentile dominions, just because he believed that their authority had been taken away, doesn't mean they're leaving. Okay, they're going to fight for their turf. They're going to do all they can to blind the people who live under their charge to the gospel. They don't want to lose their worship. They enjoy enslaving their populations. They hate Yahweh. They hate God's people. The last thing they want is to lose their own subjects to the real king. Okay, they're going to continue to fight. This is why Paul talks about spiritual warfare. Okay, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and rulers, in the heavenlies. Okay, it is a conflict. They're not dead yet. They're not destroyed yet. They will be, and they know it because of Psalm 82 and other passages. They know that. But Paul, again, has linked the coming of the kingdom and with it the day of the Lord in the end and the destruction of these supernatural beings. He's linked it in Romans. We just read the passage to something called the fullness of the Gentiles. When the fullness of the Gentiles is brought in, then Israel will awaken. And all Israel will be saved. And that needs to happen too. That needs to happen too. So do you see what that means? Paul, in his, again, biblical theology, links the success of the Great Commission to the return of the Lord, the day of the Lord, and the final destruction of all the cosmic powers. So when I get asked, what is spiritual warfare? Okay, it's not shouting at demons. Okay, it's not, these confrontational things that we think of with spiritual warfare, spooky stuff like we're Ghostbusters or something, okay? It's not that. I've talked to plenty of missionaries and they have those episodes, and people over here too, they have these episodes. They're real and it could happen. But that is not the ultimate end game. It's not even the ultimate battle. It's not really even what it's about. What it's about, you just ask yourself a simple question. If the principalities and powers and the rulers, the powers of darkness, if they know this stuff, and by now they do because, it's out in the open. What do they fear? What do they fear? They fear their own destruction, which means they fear the success of the Great Commission. Okay? Their game plan, do they think they can win? Well, of course they don't. They don't think they can beat the Most High. They don't think they're going to kill him off. Okay, they're not idiots, all right? But what they do believe, what they do know, is that the longer we kick the Great Commission can down the road, the longer we blind people to the gospel, the longer it takes to reach whatever point this is, and only God knows when the fullness of the Gentiles is accomplished and Israel awakens, the longer we can keep that in the future, we survive. That's the game plan. That's how they are going to define victory. We're still here. And this is spiritual warfare. It is focused on the Great Commission. So what I try to advise people is, look, I know spiritual warfare sounds sexy. Again, it's because of the way it's sort of been Hollywoodized and whatnot. And like it would just be the highlight of our day to get into a conflict with a demon. Okay, what the highlight of your day ought to be is winning somebody to the Lord. Okay, because that is what they fear. They don't fear getting kicked out of a room or, I got to go possess somebody now else, No, what they fear is their own destruction. And the only thing that's going to lead to that is the success of the Great Commission. That is biblical theology.
Okay, thanks for watching. Arigato. Mata ne. Bye-bye.